Why would longtime comedian Mike Larsen and longtime writer Mike Larsen leave Hollywood, California, Los Angeles to move to Plain City, Ohio? To be on Whiskey Business? No. But we'll find out tonight on Whiskey Business. Celebrations. We have them for a lot of things, right? Obviously, birthdays. Though I gotta be honest with you, I never really liked birthday parties growing up as a kid. I really didn't start to appreciate birthdays or birthday parties till I got older in life. And it was usually my friends that were throwing the parties. And sometimes I think those celebrations, when your friends throw you a party, I think they're really throwing the party for themselves. You just happen to be the excuse that they're throwing it for, but it doesn't matter. Everybody has a great time. I've had amazing birthdays for my 40th. Absolutely amazing. Couldn't be topped birthday for my 50th. I quietly brought in my 60th. You know, at least I tried to, but once again, friends had different ideas as to how maybe that night should go. My point is that celebrations are full of just, you know, something. Usually when you celebrate, it's something special. Am I right? You know, there's an occasion. It's momentous. It's significant. And tonight on Whiskey Business, we celebrate. We celebrate on Whiskey Business. Is it a special number podcast? No, I've lost track of how many podcasts we've done. But tonight on Whiskey Business, we celebrate, and you, our guest, Mike Larsen, unsuspecting comedian, writer, Mike Larsen, who just graciously agreed to drive in from Plain City, Ohio, and be on this podcast with me. We've met years ago, and we have a lot of things to talk about this evening. But you, my friend, you have the honor of being here tonight on Whiskey Business.
Tiffany.
A Tiffany. Do you have a
drum roll? No, I don't have nothing. I'll add it in post.
You add it in post. He'll add it in post. Our 100th bottle on Whiskey Business, ladies and gentlemen. And a special bottle indeed. Yes, it is the 10-year-old Rip Van Winkle. Yes, my friend.
Yes.
How lucky of a man are you that you come on this podcast? Not when we have a bottle of Calumet or Knob Creek or Amador or Jack Daniels or something. No. No. You come when we have the old Rip Van Winkle. The 10-year-old Rip Van Winkle. When I bought this bottle a couple of years ago, I think I paid $100 for it. When I used to buy it prior to the whiskey boom, I think I paid like $45 for it.
Wow.
I could sell this right now on the secondary market for a minimum.
It's illegal, by the way, so
you
won't.
I would never do because I hate the secondary
Right.
market. You people know that. I could sell this on the secondary market for at least $600.
Really?
Wow. $600.
Wow.
Yeah, easily. There's other bottles in that collection that I could sell for. I have an anniversary bottle of Elmer T. Lee that I could probably sell for way more than I paid for it, which I won't do because good whiskeys are meant to be shared with good friends and good people. So congratulations, Mike Larsen.
I am honored.
You, my friend, get to help us bring in our 100th bottle, not episode, because as you know, we've done a lot of two-parters and little whiskey shots here on Whiskey Business. So it's not our 100th podcast, but, you know, it is our 100th bottle.
He's opening it now.
I'm opening it now, and we're going to, you know, I'm not going to go ahead and tell you about the old Rip Van Winkle and the Pappy Van Winkle. Anybody that's in the bourbon knows that it's good stuff. Some people think that the 10-year is a little harsh, not as smooth as the.
All right.
I will pour our guest first. And we are going to drink this one neat, fellas.
All right.
All right.
It only seems appropriate that we drink it neat.
Oh, look at that.
And there normally would be 4 of these very special glasses to help you appreciate the taste and nose of the said whiskey. But one of them cracked.
Oh.
All right, I broke one. Okay, I broke one. So I have to just drink it out of a regular glass, which might mean for a more significant pour. I'm not sure.
It's hefty.
The big gulp.
So before we start talking to our very special guest tonight, a toast, salute, boys.
Salute.
I want to say thank you to Greg Hansberry and John Whitney for making this little podcast come true each and every week. And thank you, Mr. Larsen,
Yes,
for being with us
happy
this
to
evening.
be here.
So here, to whiskey business.
Salute.
And the 100th bottle. Cheers.
Don't shoot it. Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's good. I don't
It's
find
a
it
little hot.
harsh.
It's a little hot,
It's a little hot.
but it's good.
And you know what's funny? If we were doing this, say, even 5 years ago, we'd probably be going, "Oh my God, oh that's the best whiskey I've ever had," and it's good whiskey. I would never besmirch the Van Winkle name, but would you agree? You're a bourbon guy, Mike, right?
I am.
There are so many good whiskeys and so many great bourbons out there now that while this is more now the mystique
Yeah.
than it is the mainstay.
Right.
As far as the standard, it's just more about the mystique and everything that's tied behind it. I mean, even the Van Winkles will tell you that they hate the fact that this product gets prostituted on the secondary market so badly. You know, that's why they Ohio just recently got a larger influx of Weller, which is the Pappy juice.
Right.
Oh, is it? All right.
Yeah, and it sells at a reasonable
It's
price.
very similar to the antique.
You like
good.
this? You like this for the antique?
So it's really sweet right up front. Like right when it touches your lips is sweet, and then it's hot going down. I haven't had my second sip
Not in
yet.
a bad way.
No,
No, it's good.
aged over 10 summers, 10 summers old. Yeah. So, and like I
the
said,
second
whenever I
sip is
get
a
a
lot
chance to
smoother
purchase
already.
a bottle like
Wow.
this at a reasonable price, I'll do it. And have I been hanging on to it? Yeah, but not to go, look, I have a bottle of 10-year Van Winkle. No, I've been waiting for a special occasion.
So, and you might not know the answer to this. I mean, because you can't find it in Kentucky. I mean, you can't find it anywhere. So, do they only make very tiny batches of it,
Yeah.
or they make a bunch and just they sell it right away?
Well, both. I mean, they make tiny batches of it, and they sell it right
people,
away.
Just people buy
And,
it up.
You know,
So you just got to be in the right spot, the right time,
and
right
when you look, and then when you get into the older ones, like the 12 would be the next one. I have some 12
Right,
as
right.
well. But then when you get into the 25s and whatnot,
Well, obviously,
by the
it
time-
takes longer to do it.
by the time that
7 proof.
sometimes what they have left in a barrel by the time it's aged 25 years is there's not much there.
Right.
It's like half gone, right? By
Yeah,
They
yeah.
sleep many years in the wood, it says. Old Rip Van Winkle. That's great.
So-
What a cool bottle, too.
It is a cool bottle.
Happy 100th, guys.
Yeah.
Happy 100
Cheers.
bottle, everybody!
Yes.
Oh, we could do this all night long.
All right,
Yeah,
do it
yeah.
again. Let's
We don't
pat
have to ask
ourselves
Mike a
on the
single
back.
question. We can just keep doing this for an hour. Happy 100th bottle.
My
Happy-
other favorite part about us is
But Mike Larsen is our guest, comedian, writer Mike Larsen, who we're trying to figure out when we first met. Was it during the San Francisco
I
Comedy
think it was.
Competition
Yeah.
back in the early 90s?
Probably, yes.
When I was living out in Los Angeles, and you were out in Los Angeles. When'd you start doing stand-up?
I started doing stand-up so my first, open mic was, I think, 82
82.
in San Francisco. And in fact, Dana Carvey was the MC. I was going on last. And right before I went on, Robin Williams dropped in for a guest set.
Right before you went on.
This is my very first time on stage.
Great.
Warmed
And so
them up
I
for
was
you?
I was going to leave, and Dana said, "No, you're not going to leave. It will never suck this bad for you. You have no idea how lucky this is for your first show to be the worst one you will ever do." And he made me stay, and of course I sucked. The worst thing about it, though, is I brought this girl to see me who I had the hots for, her and my best friend. And while I was on stage, I looked down and they were holding hands.
Oh, man, no.
I couldn't get any worse.
No, it's going on after Robin Williams, and my hot girlfriend likes the other girl better.
I think
wow,
friend.
man.
Yeah, so.
And why didn't you just get out of stand-up right then and there? Why didn't you just walk out of
Well,
that club and say, you know what, maybe this isn't for me?
I gotta say, Dana he told me, he said, you gotta promise me you will do this for 6 months and then you can quit. But don't, and you're gonna suck. That's okay. You're gonna suck. Don't worry about it. And it was such good advice for people who think, they get a laugh at the dinner table, so they think they're going to kill at a club. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the ones that do kill the first time are usually the worst comics. Right. It means they're just doing hacky stuff.
Right.
But it was hard for me. But I kind of decided, okay, I'll do that. I'll commit to doing it for 6 months and see what happens.
And you started in San Francisco.
Started in San Francisco, but it was still just a hobby. That's where I grew up.
But a great comedy town.
Well,
right?
And the local acts at the time, you'd go to an open mic and it would be Robin and Dana Carvey and Ellen DeGeneres and Paula Poundstone and Bob Goldthwait. It was like,
and Mike Larsen.
It was crazy the amount of talent there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't then really until after college I went to Washington D.C. to get a job on Capitol Hill and started doing open mics there, and it was a smaller pond for me, and that's really what it was for me. The thing that got me, suddenly I was one of the funnier guys instead of just one of the bums,
Right.
So
because it was a smaller pond.
Yeah, there just weren't that many comics, and most people, like in a place like DC, if you're a good comic, you move to New York or LA pretty quick,
right?
So there just wasn't. There was Tommy Davison from Baltimore who was big then, but there weren't really many local acts that were intimidating.
I want to talk about that. You mentioned you moved to Washington D.C. and Capitol Hill because in your body of work, I mean, you've written political speeches for for people.
I do a lot of political work. I still do. Yeah,
you still do, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Write
speeches for
And do they have humor in them?
Sometimes. I mean, I used to write for Ted Kennedy, just jokes. They would call me and say, "Hey, Ted's going to speak to the garbage man's union. Can you give us a couple jokes?" And I'd send them some jokes, whatever, But then I worked on staff of this woman, Jackie Spear, who's a congresswoman from California, and I was her communications director. So I would do everything, write her speeches. But, I think people appreciate a politician who has a sense of humor.
I do.
And they're the ones that don't. You wonder, like, what the hell, man? So that's something that I think that kind of a go-to for me. People will reach out to me because they know I can help make their boss funny. Mm-hmm. Or at least their version of it, whatever it is. You don't want them to be a clown, but you want to show they have a sense of humor.
A sense of humor and a personality.
And can laugh at themselves and all those things that show you're a human being. I
think any type of politician is somewhat self-deprecating.
Yes.
Even. I think, wow, all right, he gets it. He knows how to make fun of himself a little bit and doesn't take himself too seriously. I want to come back to politics a little bit later in the podcast and see where your head is these days in the humor world in respects to politics. But going back to those early days, you said Robin Williams goes on before you, and how long does he do when he's up
40 minutes?
40
it's like 2 in the morning.
He does. He doesn't go on. Robin Williams doesn't go on for 10 minutes.
No.
and get off and say, but no, he's just there.
And he was at that time. I think Mork and Mindy was still on, so he was he was huge. I mean, he's always been a huge star, but he was. Yeah,
Mork and Mindy was the number one show on television, and he was the reason.
Yeah. So he did his time, and then of course he got off, and the audience started to leave, and I remember Dana running on and saying, "Sit down, sit down, sit down. We have a real special treat now. This is this guy's first time.
Oh man!
And he's gonna follow Robin." And people are like, "Oh man,
let's watch this train wreck. Let's watch this disaster."
And it was, and I am so grateful that he made me do it, because it's
that's a baptism.
You can survive that.
That's a baptism by fire, for real. Yeah.
Right.
So you started in 82, and I'm trying to see how our careers are parallel. I started open micing in 88 or 89. Do you remember your first paid gig?
Well, my first weekend gig was Garvin's in D.C., opening for Waylon Flowers and Madam.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was awesome.
Also the Center Square at times
Yeah,
on
yeah,
Hollywood
that was
Squares.
awesome. That was like my first weekend gig. I don't remember. I'm sure I got like a Tuesday night for $10 somewhere before that. But
No, as far as like a whole
know.
weekend gig, yeah, mine was at the Funny Bone. And the only reason I bring it up, I think I mentioned it on a previous podcast, but to bring it up because it also relates to you as well. The headliner was a guy named Kodak, Dak Rako. The feature act was Drew Carey.
all right.
Drew Carey
Yeah.
was the feature act, and just super strong and
so good.
and so funny, and me opening. Right. But I remember that was my first paid gig, and you actually worked on the Drew Carey show.
I did, yeah, and I had worked with Drew a few times as a comic, yeah, you know, it just has to be said about Drew Carey that there is not a nicer, more humble person in show business than Drew. Drew, even when, and I don't, we're not buddies now, you know, but when he was a stand-up, and then when he had his show, he would just always look out for people. And in fact, we'd go out drinking sometimes after a show, and, you know, Drew would have a few drinks in him and would insist on taking pictures with everybody in the place. And we're like, Drew, you don't have to do this, you know. But he's very much what I think people in Ohio like to think Ohio people are. This is super friendly, approachable. Drew is absolutely that.
And his work ethic is amazing.
Yeah.
I remember after the week at the Funny Bone, Drew was headlining now, and I had the opportunity to feature for him. I believe it was in Atlanta, maybe the Comedy Cafe or the Funny Bone. I don't remember, but I remember he was on his trek, if you will, his journey from Cleveland to Los Angeles. I believe he had a Mercury Tracer.
Okay.
And in the back of the Tracer, you know, he'd fold down the seats. He had a fold-up desk that he pulled out and brought into the condo, and he set up his office, if you will,
Wow.
for that week that we were in the condo
Yeah.
with, computer and everything. And he was
Right
He was working it, man. He
Yeah.
was writing, he was working, he was making
Yeah.
contacts, he was making connections. And I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh man, I'm heading out to Los Angeles, and I'm just trying to put everything, get everything lined up and everything." I mean, he was constantly working. You know, he had the dream, the goal, the plan.
The first week I worked for him was at the comedy stop at the Tropicana in Atlantic City, and we bonded over the fact that we both wrote every day. I mean, I early on in my career forced myself to write a page of jokes every morning before I got to do the thing I wanted to do. So whatever I was going to do that day, I was going to go to the mall or go play golf or whatever. At first I had to fill a page, and it didn't have to be good. I just had to fill it, you know, which was just a really good exercise.
Sure.
And when I met Drew, we were going to go get breakfast or something, and I said, all right, I got to write my page. And he was like, oh, my God, you do that too? And so we found out that we both kind of had this similar thing, you know. And for me, it was because when I first started out, there was some comics in D.C. who just stole everybody's material all the time. And you know, I was pissed off, and Will Durst, who's a comic from San Francisco, said, "You got to write more. If you're good, they're gonna steal from you.
They're gonna take it from you.
You just got to write faster than they can steal. Don't worry about the stealing." And it was such good advice, you know. And so that was kind of it. It was like I just got to keep.
Still pisses
keep writing.
you off,
Of
though.
course, it pissed me
Keep
off.
up the pace.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about Drew Carey real quick?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a big fan of him. Obviously, wasn't as close to you guys. And then he gets this Price is Right gig. And, you know, like, that's no question a great, cushy gig. But to me, a comedian, someone who had his own stand-up or his own sitcom, like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's a sellout, but, like, you're sticking a mic in front of a bunch of old ladies. I don't know. And granted, his paycheck is fucking humongous, and he's on TV every day. But don't you think he has in the back of his head he wants to do a Netflix special? Or did you lose that?
know.
I can't speak for him, but I can say that he had the successful sitcom,
right?
So been there, done that, and I'm just basing this off off the guy I met in the comedy condo, who has a plan in his mind to take care of himself and his family. I would think that,
and I don't mean to be disparaging. I just think he would get bored
to have
with that.
this #1 game show and host it.
Can I also say that Drew is such a huge student of entertainment, and I know for him, because we have a mutual friend, a great comic out of Cleveland named Terry Mulroy. I don't know if you remember.
I remember Terry. Yeah,
but Terry is still close with Drew. They grew up together, and I remember when he got Price is Right, Terry was saying that Drew was so proud that he was following Bob Barker.
Right.
It was almost like following Carson.
Sure.
I think to him that was like, man, I'm television royalty.
Okay.
So I think that was
and
part
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just figured.
Yeah.
Again, you would. I don't know.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Me as the host of this podcast, and you as producer of this podcast, and Whitney as the man behind our YouTube videos, and even Mike Larsen is sitting across from here.
Right.
Drew Carey leaves The Price is Right, and they ask any one of us to take the gig.
Well, but
what are you doing?
Well, of course
what are
we're
you
taking
going to do?
Of course we're taking it. But we did.
Are you going to reluctantly put that microphone in front of an old lady and go higher or lower?
Does he still have the long,
No, you're
skinny
going to
microphone?
embrace it. You're going
I'm gonna listen to that yodeling guy on the fucking mountain every goddamn day if I was making that cash,
I knew this
dude.
was going to come off the wrong way.
You're going to take it and run.
Yeah.
Wait, I don't know.
How many
guess,
people do you think are waiting in the wings?
Everyone,
for Alex
everyone,
Trebek
everyone.
to leave Jeopardy. Because he's going to call it quits. And I know he's ill, but
I don't know. I guess in my head I think of them as different genres.
I doubt
game
that
show
Drew
hosts.
saw it
And
as a step down.
No,
I
not
think-
I'm
at
not
all.
saying it's a step down.
No,
I just don't think
he saw it as a different lane, but he was. I mean, it was. It's an iconic show.
Sure, right.
And I think that's what he wrapped it around.
And
embraced
I
that.
couldn't imagine him not working. I think he would go crazy.
Crazy.
I mean, he's got loads of money, but he's just not the type of guy who's going to sit on his cash.
No.
All right. Well, I just think about that
it's
sometimes.
yeah.
Like he wouldn't hold. He would want to
it's
hold
a good
out for a late
question.
night show. Everybody.
It's-
David Spade has his own fucking late night show now.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I'm just
By the way,
throwing it
I
out
would
there.
love to sell out. I don't even care what it is.
Really? Yeah. I keep waiting for my opportunity.
Yeah.
So someone said about this podcast, because we have a different bottle every week. That's one of the novelties of this podcast. We share a different bottle every week, and that's the only running theme. And someone said, well, what if you got a sponsor like a Brown Foreman, a distiller, and they said well, you're going to have to stop doing other people's whiskey. We all go, okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
We made it to 100. Sure. We'll do your products. We'd sell
course you
out.
would.
And
Touche.
So, right.
It wouldn't even need to be a whiskey company.
Yeah.
It could be like a
Vodka
ginger ale company.
business, ginger ale business.
Whiskey business brought to you by Shasta, Fanta. What is it? One of the more obscure, obscure
Fanta.
beverage companies that needs a little help.
Verner's.
Verners. I love Verners, by the way.
All right. Okay. I'm just throwing it.
You mentioned
just discussion.
You mentioned Drew, following the iconic Bob Barker, like following Carson,
Right.
Which triggers this little thought. You did your first Tonight Show in 1994
Right.
with a guy who had the baton passed to him and was not sitting in the chair very long himself, Jay Leno.
Right.
So you did the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Now, I actually watched your set again today on YouTube. It was very funny.
Thank you.
And also, I should say that you should take this as a compliment. You've aged far better than Jay Leno has since 1994. So good for you. Yeah. But it was a funny set. And how long did you prepare for that? And how did that first break come about? And in 1994 with Jay Leno, was it just as significant as it would have been for someone like Drew Carey, who actually was on with Johnny Carson?
Johnny,
yeah. So tell me about that.
Well, back then we all had our 6-minute set ready. Anyone who was anything as a comedian had their Tonight Show set ready. We're constantly working it, and So for years, when Johnny had the show, the guy, Jim McCauley, who booked the talent, was legendary for putting comics through torture. Would have them do the set 40 times and would say, okay, I want you to trim this or trim that. So I didn't think I was ready. I knew I was a good comic. I knew that.
And it was a good set.
Right. So I was at Igby's Comedy Club in L.A., and Jimmy Brogan, who at the time was booking the comics for Jay and was a comic himself, I get off stage, and Jimmy said, hey, why haven't you sent Jay a tape? And I said, I will when I'm ready. And he said, you're ready. And I said, oh, okay, where should I send the tape? And he said, you don't got to send the tape. I'm the guy. Tomorrow night, come to the Laugh Factory and do your set. So I said, okay. So I'm still thinking, though, that this is going to be this long, drawn-out process. So I go to the Laugh Factory, do my set. It goes great. I get off, and Jimmy says, great, what are you doing next Tuesday? And I said, I'm free. And he said, well, good, we want to do the show. And I was like, oh, what show? And he's like, the Tonight Show.
The Tonight Show.
And I was like,
what?
You mean like to be on television? And he's like, what do you think we're doing here? So thank God I was that naive, because I didn't kill myself with pressure, where had I known that if I do this, this is going to lead to everything. So, yeah, I did that first set. It went great. William Shatner was one of the other guests.
Shatner was at
and I made
the
Shatner laugh before the show. He came over and introduced himself in my dressing room, and my mom and dad were in there with me, and that was awesome, And I said, I feel that every comedian I know is a Trekkie, except me. And I just think of all my friends who should be here instead of me. And he said, really, you don't like Star Trek? I said, no, I really don't. And he goes, come here, and he gives me a hug. Yeah, I wouldn't have either ended up in it.
Oh, that's funny.
But no, so then you ask about, was it as big as Johnny? So I had a great set. The next day, I get a call at the house from Jay. And he said, hey, I just want to let you know that was one of the best first sets I've seen.
It really
years.
was. There was a ton of applause breaks.
Yeah, and he's like, you should be feeling very proud. And I said, oh, thank you, Jay. And he said, so have you been getting a lot of calls, like from agents and managers? And I was like, no, I haven't gotten any. And he's like, really? And I felt so sorry for Jay, because, that was on him, more than on me.
Because he feels like, you just had this great set, you're not Johnny, and
right.
I'm supposed to be a star maker.
Well, and it turns out that was the same week as the Montreal Comedy Festival, so people were out of town and whatever. Right. But no, it was great. So the first time you do the show, Jay sets you up for success. He says, he does his little warm-up, and he tells the audience, hey, exciting night tonight. A guy has been on his first time. And then he says, be hanging out so I can point them out to you. So when I introduce you, they know you, which is great, right? So I do that, and that turned out great. So then, immediately, like the day after, they call and say, Jay wants you back right away. Do you have a set ready? And I said, yeah, I have a set. And they said, okay, so be ready. Have your clothes picked out, because you're local, we might call you last minute. So I had like a suit hanging on a hook in my bedroom.
My Tonight Show suit.
For a year and a half, waiting for the call.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, what? And finally it comes like on a, like on a Wednesday, hey, can you be here at 6? We had a fallout. And then I go, and there's no special treatment. You're just you're just one of the guys, which I kind of get, It's, hey, you're in now, buddy, But Jay didn't even say hi before the show. Nobody.
He didn't do the little
introduce me
like he did in the first time around.
No, didn't do any of that. But I part of that I think is respect. That hey man, you made it. You don't need to have your hand held. But it was a very different.
No, hold my hand. I would like you to hold my hand
Right.
again. Just because
But
it was.
everything that I have done since then, television, my writing jobs, everything, I draw a straight line from the Tonight Show. That just gave me the respect. Once you do that as a comic, you're a comic.
Right.
No one can question whether or not you belong. You got your card stamped if you do Letterman or Tonight
Right.
Show. Those couple of things.
And do you think they still have the impact today that they had even back in '94? I mean, is it still, that rare air?
I don't know. I know I did a set at Flappers in Burbank last time. I was in L.A. With my friend Tony Kameen, and we were laughing that everybody had a credit. Tony's done a bunch of Conans. Laurie Kilmartin was on the show. A bunch of stuff. So there are more credits to go around. But, like, for instance, I did The Tonight Show and did HBO, but could not get booked on, what was the Evening at the Improv? Which every
bear cover did Evening at the Improv.
Times. I could not break that one. So
it's interesting.
Yeah.
I did Comedy on the Road.
I did that
with
one,
John Biner. He was the host of that. And then my first national spot was Comic Strip Live on Fox. Fox did a stand-up show with Wayne Cotter.
Yeah.
Who
Sounds like Sinbad would be involved with that one.
I think he was the host at one time.
Wayne Cotter was the host,
Right.
who mispronounced my name. And it's funny. You talk about the twists and the turns about how things go. Here's who was on that particular comedy dais, if you will. Louis C.K.
Yeah.
Sarah Silverman, Dave Attell, and Dino Tripodis. One of these things is not like the other in 2019.
But you know what's great about that? It almost becomes like your graduating class. Like when I auditioned for Bud at the Improv, there were 4 comics, and it was Doug Benson, Judd Apatow, Adam Sandler, and I auditioned for Bud that night. And because of that, whenever I see any of those guys, even if I see Adam somewhere, it's like we graduated together. We were there that same night, and it's a similar thing. Like,
yeah, but
that was still a big break for all 4 of you.
Yeah, right, because they were very early in their careers as well. My career took a little bit of a different turn because a year and a half later, I come back to Columbus and take this radio job on a fluke and thinking it won't work out, and I'll go back there, but they continued down the path. So who's to say if I didn't take the radio job and would have stuck to my guns? I don't know. Would I have been doing more stand-up? Probably. Would I have a TV show? Would you have written a TV show for me? I don't know.
Would you be hosting a daytime game show?
Well, gladly. Who's to say what might have been?
Would you be ostracized for masturbating in front of young comedians?
Yeah.
We'd forgive
Who
you.
knows? Who knows? I don't know. Maybe, depending on when it happened.
It was the 80s.
Yeah. You worked on a lot of shows. You mentioned Drew Carey, and I'm gonna just attach all these 2 or 3 degrees of separation. You wrote for Ellen.
Ellen, yes.
Ellen's TV show.
Ellen's TV show when she came out. I wrote the very first gay dating episode in network television history. It was after she came out when she finally went on a date. And I only know that because a friend of mine works for the Human Rights Campaign in Washington, and they were doing a timeline of like major events in gay history and came upon my name and said, "Did you realize that you are like an icon in the LGBT history?"
Because you wrote
awesome,
the
I wrote
first
that episode.
Yeah, that was a hell of a moment. And my connection to that is I auditioned and got to the producers. I got past the first audition to play the part of Ellen's friend, that played by Ari Gross.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting. So that was early. That was when the show first started.
Yes,
By the
when it
time
first started,
I was on the show, Ari was gone.
Ari was gone, so I would have been gone.
Written out.
Written out. The character would have been gone.
Down the elevator shaft.
But I auditioned for that part and got rather, which also gave me hope and optimism. Like, oh man, you're reading for the producers. I mean,
that's huge.
That's right there.
That is so huge. Yeah.
But it didn't happen. And again, if that would have happened,
I know from my early days of getting to LA as an actor, comic actor, and auditioning and being so frightened, and then later in life as an executive producer, being the producer that people come in, and it was like, God, I wish I could go back and tell 28-year-old Mike Larsen that they want you to get the part.
Right.
You know, when you're the producer, every time that door opens, you're saying, please let this be the person.
Let it be the guy.
Please let it be the guy.
Let it be a no-brainer
right,
for
so
me.
I can go back to do my regular work. But, yeah.
I mean, yeah, you worked on Ellen, Drew Carey, Grace Under Fire.
Grace Under Fire was my first job.
Rodney, remember
Rodney
Carrington had a show for a couple of years.
Whoopi, who had a show.
Yeah. And Bill Maher.
Worked for Bill Maher. Worked for Reba.
Yeah.
And, Oh, Two Guys and a Girl with...
Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place?
Yeah, with Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
In fact, that's where I met my wife, was on Two Guys.
Oh, really?
That's fun.
Was she an actress?
She was an actress. She was cast as one of Ryan's characters, many dates that he would have on the show.
And you were a writer on the show or producer?
I was probably co-exec producer at that point, I imagine, something like that. But
that show had some.
That was a funny show.
Funny show, and it had a lot of charm to it.
Really good actor, great cast. But the two of the women who were the actors on the show were always trying to get me. The year before, I'd had like a bad breakup. I was engaged, and it just went off the rails. And so they were always trying to hook me up with actresses, and I was like, I really don't want to date an actress. And Tina was on set, and she was reading The Grapes of Wrath. Like, there's so much dead time when you're on a show. And I love John Steinbeck. So I was like, oh my God, is she reading The Grapes of Wrath?
For real? Or was there something else in the book?
I know, right?
A comic book.
So Traylor Howard, who was one of the women, the stars of the show, went over and got Tina and brought her over to me. So, yeah. Oh, and then I was doing a set that night at the Comedy Store, and I said, oh, you should come see my show. And she says, I have a boyfriend. I was like, that's all right, bring your boyfriend. Fine. And so, I had a great set at the Comedy Store, and when I got off stage, Elaine Boozler came over to me, and she said, that girl's boyfriend never unfolded his arms the whole time.
Yeah, so yeah.
And like 2 days later, she calls to see, oh, thanks for the show. Oh, and by the way, I broke up with my friend.
That almost sounds sitcomish on some level. The character.
Right.
I'm gonna write you'll play the boyfriend who's unhappy that he's at the comedy club.
I don't know why everyone's laughing at this guy. He's funny.
Yeah. You'll play that guy.
Yeah.
Your life's a sitcom.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. She was reading Grapes of Wrath, huh? You say Steinbeck?
I'm a huge Steinbeck fan.
See, Mice and Men is my favorite. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the most perfect books ever.
Yeah.
Not a wasted word.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah.
But so she's still a reader, and you guys are still together.
I think she can still read. Yeah,
you can still read.
she's a
But
reader.
does she still read the classics?
Yeah, I don't read as much as I used to.
Was that
I
part
used to
of
read a ton. But...
Was that part of the thing that brought you guys together? That you read Steinbeck. Did you have a literary discussion? Was that part of the courtship?
I don't know that we did.
No.
I
You just made a mental note.
Right. Well, she was reading Steinbeck, and she had great tits. So I'm not saying that I would have been there if only one of those things were there, but the combination was.
You're reading the Grapes. Have you ever read of of Mice and Men?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Of Mice and Memories. Funny. So you have this long, nice, established career, and then you decide to leave it all and come to Ohio. Do you have any roots in Ohio?
No, my wife does.
Your wife does.
My wife grew up in Canton. Her brothers live here in Columbus.
Her brothers live in Columbus.
And so my daughter, Marianne, has cousins in San Francisco, where I grew up, and in Ohio, where Tina grew up. And she was always lamenting that she didn't get to see her cousins. And I grew up surrounded by cousins. We were always playing with the cousins, So when my career changed and most of my writing jobs became freelance, it gave us the freedom that we could move. I wasn't going to the studio every day. Mm-hmm. So, and part of it was just lowering our monthly nut. It's not California. You have crazy. A great year. And at the end of the year, there's nothing left. you know?
Right.
And that was a big part of it. It's like, I would like to be able to have a little bit of money in the bank at the end of the year.
Horrible place to live if you don't have money. And when I was living out there, I did not have any money, and it was just miserable.
Well, and I'm a blue collar kid. I was the first one in my family to go to college, and I would like to say that when I first made good money, I was so smart and I saved it all, but I didn't. I bought a sports car, and I got a big house, and had them put in a new. There was already a pool, but I wanted a different pool.
I want my pool.
Right.
I want my pool.
And it was.
I don't know what happened in this other pool prior to me, and I don't want to know.
When you get it, you think. I mean, I was fantasizing about. Buying the San Francisco Giants someday, because if I'm going to, I made this much, and then the next year I made twice as much as the first year, which was a good year, and I'm thinking, wow, if that continues.
Isn't that kind of the allure of that business, though? Especially
Yes.
behind the camera, when you start writing on a show, and then all of a sudden you're a co-producer, and then you're an executive. Now, then all of a sudden, the next step up, you're the showrunner, and then all of a sudden, because of my success here, I've actually created a show, and now so yeah, you never think you think you're just going to keep going up, right?
And there's a ceiling there because you do go up. You go from staff writer to story editor to co-producer to producer, and you go on up. But once you get to exec producer, there's nowhere else to go. So, when I wasn't getting a job at staff time, I was telling my agents, I'll be a staff writer again. I don't need the credit. And they're like, that's not how it works.
No.
So that was really frustrating. It's like, I can't, but they can have me, and I'm really experienced, and they can pay me nothing, and I can still do it.
Yeah. And they
just don't work that way.
Why? Never having been in that world.
Part of it is the agent system is so messed up, and that the agents don't want to lower your quote because they would rather hold out and have you, the possibility of getting 10 times that.
Yeah, you're an executive producer.
I want to pay my mortgage.
I'm not gonna pimp you out as a staff writer when you've been an executive producer.
Right.
That's what they're saying.
That was kind of what you just you get to a point where everybody is at the top of the level, and now they've kind of created this thing called a consulting producer, which is usually a former exec producer who will come and work for cheaper, and it's not a real title, and so it's kind of
I want to do that.
But it pays.
I want to do that.
But it pays, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you mentioned financially. I wanted to come and let my money actually count for something, which in Ohio, as compared to living in California, world of difference. And you settle on a couple of sweet acres out towards Plain City, Ohio.
2 acres and a riding mower. I am so happy having a riding mower. I'm a city kid. I just love it. It's so funny. My wife, she's like, it takes you a lot of time, working on the yard. We could hire someone to mow the lawn. It's like, what? Then why would we? We came here so that I can mow my lawn.
That was the real reason.
I love having and because I have a riding mower, it means that I have learned how to fix riding mowers because they're constantly breaking down, and you can't pick them up and put them in the trunk of a car,
Right.
But I love all of that.
Do you ride when you ride the mower? Whenever I mow the lawn, work in the yard, I think of
thinking a lot. I don't, because I've never been someone to put on headphones and listen to a podcast or music when I work out in the yard. I like being in my own head out there. So yeah, a lot of times I'm working on. Sometimes you're writing, and sometimes you're just stewing about some, my wife is so stupid, she's that blah, whatever is going on in your head that day, but yeah, I love having that. I love that time.
How many kids you got?
I have a 13-year-old and I have a 33-year-old and 2 grandchildren from her. Yes.
You're a grandpa.
I am. Yes. And I met my older daughter when she was 10 years old. So there's that.
What do we...
Glossed over that one.
Breaks.
So I was in Iowa. I was in Iowa in 1984, working in the Iowa caucuses for Alan Cranston, who was a senator from California at the time, ran for president, and I met a woman who was a bartender, good bartender. We barely knew each other, but had sex, and a few months later, I got a call that said, "I'm pregnant, but I don't know for sure that it is yours."
Okay.
So I was like, "Oh, okay,
that's
okay.
honest.
Well, keep me informed."
Let me know.
And at the time, I was such a naive kid. I mean, the worst thing for me was, oh no, my mom will know I've had sex.
That was the worst thing.
I gotta tell mom. Catholic boy. Like, what do I?
That's the worst thing.
I was very immature. Anyway, so I didn't hear anything, so I assumed it wasn't. And then about a year later, I got a letter that had a baby picture in it, and the baby picture was me. I mean, there was no doubt. It was like, I don't need to do a blood test. That is my baby picture, But the mom was from Iowa. She was just very kind of a, I don't know, she's kind of afraid. I was from California and all that, and so she kind of kept putting off when I was going to meet her. I kept saying,
Meet the baby.
My daughter needs to know that her father wants to meet her. That I'm not. I didn't skip town.
You did wanna.
Yes, I kept saying I've got to. I want to. There was never a question of getting married. We barely knew each other, but I want to do what I can, and I was paying support. I was a stand-up comic, so a third of my income was probably $200. It wasn't like there was any money. But I was paying it. Yeah.
Was she asking for support, or did you just
I
being a good?
Yeah, we both. Yeah, I don't think that was ever even a question.
Okay.
Said, what do I got to do? Who do I need to talk to?
But she wouldn't let you meet the kid.
No, and a part of it, I think she was just fearful of who knows what. She was a farm girl from Iowa, and I was, from the big city. I don't know what it was. But finally, when she was around 7 or 8, Melissa, as my daughter, started communicating. I would write her letters, and she would send me pictures. We talked on the phone a couple times. So I'd actually had met her, just hadn't been in the same room with her until she was 5th grade, I think, fourth or 5th grade. But it was great. I mean, like, from the minute we met, she's a funny kid. She's had said that she was always getting in trouble, like, with her grandparents for being a wise ass, So
she's got the Larsen
and
comedic
then as soon as she met me, she said, "Oh, okay, now I get it." But no, she's great. So they live out in Missouri,
and the relationship with her mother just stayed friendly.
It was contentious for quite a while, but once a grandkid comes into the picture, all bets are out. No, any petty disagreements we might have.
So now just
is away.
Part of a.
So now when I go out there, we'll all go
an extended family of some sort. Yeah,
right. We're
bygones.
Right. So no, it's that's great. Yeah.
That's incredible. How old were you then when you first found that out? That she had
I was 24.
20, young,
something. Yeah, I was young. So.
And from that moment on, you wore a condom.
It's so funny when I told my brother years later that I have a daughter. He's like, "How? You never got laid?"
No, my God, that's so funny.
That's how. My brother, who was a jock, knew how to prepare for those things and probably had a condom with him at all times. I didn't. What the hell was I going to use a condom for?
This might never come around again.
Right. And, certainly I'm not going to say, wait, let me go buy it. She might change her mind. This is something magical happening here. Yeah.
So, wow.
But, it was also a really good life lesson for me later when I would tell people that by far the stupidest thing I ever did is the greatest thing I've ever done.
Right.
My daughter is the greatest thing that ever happened to me, before the second daughter.
Sure.
And yet that was kind of the worst thing I did, was knock up a stranger, but it just kind of shows that,
the fruit of that mistake,
right,
literally,
right,
ends up being something incredible.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And your daughter is in Missouri now, you say?
Yeah, she.
What does she do now?
She's a nurse practitioner and she's in private practice and is making a killing and then doing what she does, and yeah, she's doing great.
And has given you 2 beautiful grandchildren.
Yes, and a third one on the way. There'll be a third one next month.
Wow. Congrats.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cheers.
In fact, I'm going out to work the Kansas City Funny Bone the week after she is scheduled to deliver, so I can see the new baby. That'll be great.
You can write it off.
That's right. Yeah. Right.
It's amazing. So life as you've adjusted. How many years now in Ohio?
It'll be 2, I guess, in September. So.
Have we acclimated? Have we adjusted to Ohio living as opposed to LA living?
Yeah, I mean, I like Ohio a lot. I mean, you know, the winter sucks.
The winter sucks. Yes.
I mean, the snow part is great. It's just when it's not snowing and it's just you've got to put on extra layers to get the mail. You know, it's kind of. And I'm an outdoor guy. I like being outside, so it kind of kills me when I'm, you know, trapped inside. But I like it. I mean, I don't have a real developed circle of friends yet. I mean, little by little, but I had like a basketball game in LA on Sunday mornings that was for like 30 years every Sunday. Mostly writers and comics and actors, and I really miss that. You know, that was awesome to have my game.
Was that because Gary Shandling had a game like
No,
that too,
I was
right?
not. I was not in Shandling's game. No, I didn't
But he,
play in that.
but he had a
once.
game like that though.
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah.
You guys
Yeah,
should have played each other.
Yeah, no, we started out in a friend's driveway, and then we moved to my backyard, and then thankfully eventually moved to a gym because our knees were just getting shattered playing on concrete. A bunch of old guys, you know. But no, it was great.
But you mentioned to me before we started the podcast, you had a bocce court at your house.
Had a bocce court. Every
there'd be
house
Friday-
I've been in, I've
yeah.
always had an end. Yeah, Friday
And
nights.
Friday
would
night
usually be-
bocces, everybody
Any
co-
comics who were in town would come over and we'd play bocce and we'd drink and it was fun. I love it. I love playing bocce.
Well, if you're looking for a new circle of friends, right?
Italian club.
Your mother's Italian, you know, you're half
Yes.
Italian. We should
Yeah.
get you involved with the Columbus Italian
that
Club.
sounds awesome.
You'll have more
Absolutely.
friends than you need. Yeah, they are a good bunch of
Oh,
guys.
I'm sure.
So you
Yeah,
can
that'd
reestablish
be
a
awesome.
good circle of friends, or you could just start hanging out with me on a more regular basis.
Yeah.
You know what? Why not? We both like bourbon. You could sit on that front porch and smoke cigars and
write a sitcom.
talk about where our lives are now. Where is your life now? You're still writing,
Yes.
yeah?
Yeah.
You're still doing it because you can write anywhere.
Right, that's the point. And I do write anywhere. And I think if I had never been a writer, I think I would still be writing every day. That's kind of the thing I do. So, yeah, I have 2 projects now, a pilot that I'm writing that's produced by the guy who used to own UFO magazine that's in the world of UFOs, which is kind of cool. The thing I like about it is that I know I am so agnostic on the whole UFO thing. It's like, yeah, sure, they probably exist. You know, what do I know? But I love when someone brings me an idea for something that I have no prior interest in because I get to look at it fresh. Like, what's funny about this? I don't have any axe to grind, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's been fun. That's been cool. And then another project with another producer on a show about that was originally a feature that I wrote with a friend that we are now rewriting, hoping to sell to a streaming service. But yeah, I'm always writing
Well,
that, and then I have my other stuff. You know, I'm a kind of a hired gun as a writer now. I've ghostwritten books for people and articles. I do my political stuff. It's like, you know.
I told you I wanted to come back to the
Yeah.
political stuff. In these current political times, I don't know what your political leanings are. I don't care whether be they right or left. But I think I wanted to just generically just get your thought process on. I mean, the Trump years have been a gold mine for late night television on some level, but go past the humor, if you will, for a second, and just it seems to me like even though you've written humorous things politically speaking, I can just tell by your body language that politics and what seems to be going on in our country in any given year, in any given cycle, it means something to you.
Yeah, and you know, in many ways, Trump has not been good for political comedy because part of the point of political comedy, and I've always done political comedy in my stand-up, part of the point of it is that you take something really dry and boring and you put a spin on it that no one's thought of yet.
Right.
And with Trump, it is the opposite. You take the buffoonery, the stupid thing that dumb guy did, and you kind of just say it.
You don't have to.
There's not a lot of spin.
Yeah, there's
no
not.
one wants to really. No one cares what new thing I can say about Donald Trump. He is already the joke. So that's kind of hard.
So you find this is what I find. You almost see like the comic having to one up it.
Right.
take whatever crazy buffoon-like thing he may have done or said and exaggerate it even more.
There's nothing you can say that he might not say himself. But also, there's no shelf life to it. He tweets something in the morning. I write a joke and I go do it that night at the Funny Bone, and people are like, "You're still on that?"
Mm-hmm.
He's done 12 other crazy things since then. So, I talk about Trump a little bit. I talk more about myself in politics. I describe my political leanings as a liberal / hypocrite. Because I don't live by any of the things I believe in. I hate animal cruelty and I love meat. I am a feminist, but I formed that opinion because I knew it would help me get laid.
I get it.
I try, and also with Republicans in the audience, in Ohio, you deal with a lot of conservative people. I try to get them to get on that page with me. Let's just cop to our bullshit. Okay? Can we just all agree that we don't all live a perfect life? That we're not virtuous people.
Good luck.
Right.
Good luck with that. I don't know if you can.
Own it. I mean,
that's an admirable goal.
Especially with like farmers in Ohio. I had a guy, a neighbor who's a farmer, and we were talking politics, and he said, "Are you a socialist?" And I said, "Not like you are. I've never gotten paid money not to grow corn. I would love to not grow corn. I've not grown corn my entire life. I've never gotten money from the government. Every one of these farmers are on the government dole. There's tariffs, so we got to give them all this money, and then what is socialism? Like Social Security? Is that what you're talking about? Medicare? The public schools? I don't, So, and again, I don't blame them for having, if you have your political view, that's fine. But, in my act, I just try to say, let's at least cop to it.
Right.
That we're all, and I think we don't not get along because we have different opinions. We don't get along because we're just so damn pompous about it. That you've got to say, if you support Trump, you're a racist, and if you don't like Trump, you're a socialist.
Right.
But
it does come down to labels.
I know.
And we're very quick to label these days.
And it's hard to get around that at that point.
Right.
Whereas, I have very, very good friends who are very conservative, and people say, how are you and Nick friends? And it's like, well, we tend not to talk about the stuff that pisses us off.
Right.
But if we do, we do it with respect. But mostly we talk about basketball or golf or bourbon or something else that we have in common,
I have to agree with certain friends not to bring up politics.
Right.
Or, and otherwise it's going to be a contentious conversation.
I might bring it up in kind of a curious way, like, hey, I'm curious, what do you think about the tariff thing? Is that something you support as a conservative? We can discuss it intellectually without getting into the guy, But I had politicians that I supported that I didn't respect. I was never a big fan of Bill Clinton as a human being, but I voted for him. He wasn't, Donald Trump. So I understand that someone can say, hey, I don't like Trump either, but I like that he has appointed conservative judges. If that's how you believe, I get that,
Would you ever think of running for office yourself?
So I did when I was 19. I ran for my city council back in San Bruno, suburb of San Francisco.
You go. And?
I lost, obviously, which is why I said I ran and not I served. Right. There is a chance. There are some people talking to me about running in next year for a state representative position in where I live in Plain City. Mm-hmm. It's such a Republican district. Democrats have never gotten 40%, I don't think.
Right.
Which is kind of the appeal to me.
Sure.
Because it's like no one's going to blame me, and maybe, I don't know, maybe. So we'll see.
You're not
I'm
ruling it
thinking
out.
about
I could see the little twinkle in your eye.
No,
You're not ruling that out any more than
I
you're.
like talking. That part of it is awesome. You get to go talk to people.
Back to what we said about politicians. You know, we like politicians that have a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
I think a funny, sincerely funny, in the body and soul funny politician could translate very well in this world, especially right now, especially with social media.
And, yeah, right. And I'm just kind of curious. Like I say, I've been doing this in my act. That when I talk to people, the thing I love the most after a show is when someone comes up to me and says, "I'm a Republican. I disagree with everything you say, but God, you're funny." And that's it. Boom. That's the sweet spot for me.
That's good.
So, you know, there is a part of me that kind of wants to test the theory of, can we just be honest with people, even people you do. For instance, in Ohio, you know, especially where I live out in Union County, very rural, very Catholic, you know, very Republican. They're all very pro-life. But everyone I have talked to who is pro-life, if you say, do you vote against abortion? Yes. But if I ask them, if your daughter was raped, do you believe she should be forced to carry the rapist baby to term? And they all say no. Well, that's what you're voting for when you vote these anti-abortion politicians. They are forcing rape victims to carry their rapist baby to term. And in Ohio, once they have that baby, the rapist has equal rights to the child as the woman does. So
what aren't they getting?
So how many times are you going to punish this person? So, and again, I just like to bring up the thing that if you're going to vote for an idea, that's great, but think it through. And how is it logically applied, you know? And like I say, I talk about those things on stage, and it's always, but abortion is a crowd killer. Abortion. I do my abortion chunk.
Next week, I'm gonna open with it.
Yeah, that's great. That's it. Thanks, Mike.
Right. Yeah, the guy following.
Celebrate 100 bottles of dead babies.
Oh man. Well, you know, we have another mutual comedic friend. You know Drew Hastings.
I do know Drew.
Yeah, and Drew's the mayor
out in
Hillsborough.
Is it? Yeah,
I think that's what it is. And
he's a funny guy,
very funny guy,
and very different politically than I am. Very conservative guy.
Very conservative guy, and he actually had a little bit of.
There was a little scandal.
I mean, he came out of it.
What it was, but
he came out of it just fine.
Right.
You know, because his people, his citizens, they love him.
Great.
And I don't know if we'll ever hear this, but congratulations to Drew Hastings, who I believe at 64 years of age became a father for the first time.
No way, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, had his first baby boy.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a daddy, so
There's plenty of time for you.
No.
Okay,
no.
Well, there have been a number of comedians who have gone into, you know, Jimmy Tingle ran for lieutenant governor in Massachusetts. I don't remember if he won or not. But there's always been
Al Franken.
You know, of course, Al Franken, right?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be that crazy, but my question to you is, like, you know, you're thinking about it and like toying with the idea, but let's flash forward a second. Say you do it and you win. All I can think about is Robert Redford in the movie The Candidate. You're like, what do we do now?
Right,
you know?
right. Well, and it really is a lopsided district. It would be remarkable if that happened. But I love politics. I would be more than happy to be in the legislature, especially when when it's just a commute from your house. You don't have to move you know, it's just down the street in Columbus. But yeah, the woman who holds the seat is very nice. I've met her a few times. She's very nice. She's very, very conservative. But you know, I just know. In fact, when I first started, when someone asked me about it,
has she run unopposed in any election year?
She just got elected last year, but I think she'd been on the city council for years.
Okay.
And she ran the guy who ran against her is a really nice guy, but he will say I was the warm body. The party said we need to have a name on the ballot, you know. So he, like I say, I like the idea of engaging people and making them make a conscious decision and not just vote for the R or the D, which very often they do. And so the whole idea, if I were to run, would be to, it would be much more about personality than it would be about, retail politics, about knocking on doors.
You think you'd get anything done?
I mean, in the legislature itself?
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother matter.
I know, it's a whole other podcast.
But, when I worked so Jackie Spear, who's the congresswoman I worked for, who's one of my best friends, she's my daughter's godmother, but she was someone, whenever she's been in office, who believes in that everything needs a visual component, everything needs to have a little bit of a spectacle to it. So even when she was in Congress and it was a Republican Congress and there was a Republican president, she still was able to get things done. And she said, I'm not going to get assault weapons banned, but I can get earmarks, reduce. I mean, she finds at some point there is something I believe in that they also believe in. And I really admired that about her. And so I think, being practical, sometimes, you can,
sure.
But yeah, I
win battles, lose wars.
Well, yeah.
I mean, when it might be,
But it's,
as
John
far
F.
as
Kennedy said that government is a steamroller. It's not a race car. It's a steamroller, and it moves slow, and it moves, and you can't stop it. And you can maybe turn it a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, but it's moving.
It's still moving.
And so I kind of like that image of, you do what you can. You try to, and in this day and age with social media, you can get your voice out there. The legislature, they passed this big bailout of these the nuclear power plants, and it passed by one vote, which means that if I were to run, the woman I'm running against did that. She was the one vote, right? Every one of them owns that because it only won by one vote. But they get this huge bailout and the ratepayers have to pay it,
right?
To bail out failing, nuclear power plants and a coal-powered plant, and they got the money by taking it away from renewable energy, from like solar and wind, and it was, there's no voter in Ohio that says, gee, I sure hope they go and bail out a power company for me, and so those are kind of things that I would be excited to talk about.
Well, I am going to extend a future invite to you to return to Whiskey Business when you announce your candidacy for the position, and then we'll come back and talk more about that.
Oh, if I run for office, I can't do these kinds of shows.
We gotta start wrapping things up. Mike Larsen, you have been so worth the 100th bottle of Whiskey Business, the old Rip Van Winkle, man. This has been great.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight.
Absolutely.
We had a great time. We left a lot of stuff on the table, but that's okay. We can come back and visit another time in a future podcast, whether you run for office or not.
I like that.
And speaking of your social medias, I clipped Mr. Hansberry earlier. We didn't get to mention all the fun stuff that we need to mention.
Yeah.
To remind
Why don't you,
people.
real quick, Mike, where can we find you? And
All right, well, my website is writmikelarsen.com, so W-R-I-T-E, Mike Larsen, L-A-R-S-E-N. And then I am pretty much Write Mike Larsen and everything. So Twitter is at Write Mike Larsen. I'm that on all my social media as well.
there you go. Well, we are at Whiskey Business. Find us on Instagram and Facebook, Twitter.
WhiskeyBusinessShow.com.
Thank you. Yes. Also on YouTube, this is being videotaped. Did you know that? We didn't have you sign the
Yes.
disclosure. Subscribe right there on YouTube. It's Whiskey Business with Dino Tripodis. And when you subscribe, it just populates and you get a reminder on your phone.
Great.
It's nice, does the work for you. Rate and review us on iTunes. That helps out. And spread the word. We're going to make sure that we have all links to The Premise, which is coming up.
Premise.
And
actually,
when this drops, it'll actually be
the night before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're watching this,
there'll be time to get a ticket.
Drop, so forth. And then one thing we can promote still after is the Columbus Podcast Awards.
Are we going to win
On
something?
the 25th. I don't know if we're going to win
We're
something.
gonna win something, right?
We're up in 2 categories. We're up in the comedy category, and we're up for Podcast of the Year like everybody else.
And I think they're going to have the bar and concession stand open regardless.
Oh, so there'll be popcorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, great. So yeah, that's August 25th at Gateway from 6 to 8. ColumbusPodcastAwards.com. Get free tickets and join us for that.
Premise tomorrow night.
And the premise is tomorrow night.
Tickets on sale at upfrontstage.com.
At the Upfront Stage, yeah. The Jeff Gage and Jack Shepard, the competitors. Jerry Elliott, special guest panelist, and Nikki Winkleman, special guest comedian. All of it put together by the incomparable Greg Hansberry on the audio side. And if you're enjoying the YouTube version of anything, it's John Whitney, ladies and gentlemen, on a weekly, regular basis. And me, well, I just do what I do, get the opportunity to talk to very delightful, enlightening, entertaining people like Mike Larsen, man. Thank you so much, brother.
I'm happy to be here. This is great. And I had never had Rip Van Winkle.
Well, you know,
before. It's very good.
Maybe we'll take a step up, rinse these out, and try some 12 before we leave. Oh, it is the 100th bottle, everybody. Yeah.
Happy.
Check this out and everything else. If you're just now becoming a fan of whiskey business, we have a whole bunch of. We have 99 other bottles of Jabber Jabber.
Jabber Jabber. That's what it's officially called.
Go
Jabber
back
Jabber.
and check out. So until the next bottle, which I believe, for those of you who are fans of whiskey business, next week it's the return of the most superstitious fan in the world in respects to Ohio State football. It's the return of Billy DeMora. Next week,
this will be good because there's new coaches, he's nuts.
We have three podcasts with Billy. Next week is we're calling it Fourth Down and DeMora to Go. So check that one out. And until the next bottle, thank you so much, people. See ya.